everyday people.
I turned into the alley. The second I did, I heard footsteps behind me.
Real stories.
As I stood up, he suddenly stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Way too close.
Moments that should never have happened.
He looked wild, almost feral. His body was covered in bruises and scratches.
Tonight's stories come from people who experienced something unsettling, something they still can't explain. Stories that stayed with them long after they ended. You're listening to Terror, presented by Survival Horror Ambience.
This happened about a year ago, when I was 21. Like a lot of people my age, I used dating apps sometimes. Nothing too serious, just something to do when I was bored, scrolling through profiles and talking to random people. One night, I downloaded this knockoff dating app that was basically like Tinder, except it was aimed at guys who liked curvy women. I didn't expect much from it, but within a few hours, I had matched with a few decent guys and started chatting. Most of them were around my age. Then, the next day, I got a message that I wish I had never opened. The guy's name was Daniel. At least, that's what his profile said. Right away, I noticed he was older. Way older than the guys I normally talk to. His profile said he was 42. Normally, I wouldn't even respond to someone that much older than me, but I was bored and the other conversations I had going were already dying out. So I replied. At first, the conversation was pretty normal, just basic stuff like where we lived, what we did for work, hobbies, things like that. But then, before we were even 8 messages into the conversation, he said something that immediately made me pause. He wrote, "I can tell just by looking at you that you'd make a wonderful mother." At first, I took it as a weird compliment. Honestly, it wasn't even the creepiest thing I had heard from a guy online. Dating apps are full of strange people. But looking back now, that should have been the moment I stopped replying. Instead, I kept talking. Eventually, he told me he lived in the next town over from my small town. That didn't sound too alarming at first until he mentioned something else. He said he worked as a bartender at 2 different bars, one in his town and one in my town. The bar in my town was only about 5 minutes from my house. That detail made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't really explain. Up until that moment, he was just some random guy on an app. Now he was someone who was physically very close to me. He also mentioned he was a single dad. Suddenly, that earlier comment about me being a wonderful mother felt a lot different, and not in a good way. Still, I kept the conversation going, mostly out of boredom. About a week later, his behavior started changing. He became really clingy. Every morning, I would wake up to messages like, "Good morning, beautiful," and there would always be like 4 or 5 emojis at the end. It was a lot. I didn't want to be rude, so I kept my replies short. Just simple things like, "Good morning," or "Hope you have a good day." Then one morning, he sent me a message that made my stomach drop a little. He wrote, "Listen, I'm going to the beach this weekend in my Jeep. I'd love for you to come with me so I could make you happy for a day." Then he added, "Plus, I'd love to get a peek at that curvy body you keep bragging about." That message made me uncomfortable immediately, so I told him I had work stuff that weekend and couldn't go. He didn't argue, he just said he'd miss me. That should have been the end of it. But here's where things got really weird. That same day, I actually did feel like going to the beach. There was a local beach area a few miles past his town, and I liked going there because it was usually quiet. So I drove out there and spent about an hour just relaxing. At one point, I was laying on my stomach in the sand, tanning and scrolling through my phone. That's when I heard someone walking up behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when I looked up, I saw a big guy standing there, late 30s or early 40s, broad shoulders, beefy build, and he was smiling at me in a really strange way. Before I could even say anything, he spoke. "So, this is work stuff, huh?" My heart completely stopped. I had never seen his face before, but there was no question in my mind. It was him. Who else would know exactly what I said in our text messages? Then he added something that made it even worse. He said, "I actually planned on going to this beach too. What a coincidence." He smirked. I just nodded awkwardly and started gathering my things. Yeah, crazy coincidence. As I stood up, he suddenly stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Way too close. "Hey, looks like you changed to go swimming." Then he looked towards the water. "Why don't we go in together?" That creepy smile was still on his face. I felt my chest tighten. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to leave. So I didn't argue. I just grabbed my stuff, walked quickly to my car, and got the hell out of there. As I drove away, I saw him standing near the grass beside the road, just waving at me, smiling. That moment alone was enough to make me want to delete the app. But unfortunately, things didn't stop there. Over the next week, I kept my replies to him very short, but somehow I kept running into him in real life. First, it was Walmart. I knew he lived somewhere behind that area, so technically it wasn't impossible. Still, it felt strange. Then, a few days later, something even worse happened. Every Friday, my friend and I go to a small local bar near my house. It's our usual hangout spot. That night, we took a couple pictures together and I posted them on Instagram. About 30 minutes later, he walked into the bar, still wearing his bartender work clothes. He walked right over and sat down next to me like it was completely normal. "Oh hey, you come here too?" I stared at him. "I come here every Friday. I've never seen you here before. Why are you here?" He shrugged. "Just passing by, saw your car outside and thought I'd come say hi." My friend grabbed my knee under the table. That was her silent way of saying, "We need to get out of here." He then asked what I was drinking and offered to buy me another. I said no. We quickly paid our tab and headed outside. But he followed us. When we got to the parking lot, he said something that genuinely scared me. He said, "You shouldn't drive. You've been drinking. Let me take you home. I can take care of you." His voice sounded desperate, almost possessive. I told him no and got into my car immediately. The whole drive home, I kept checking my mirrors to make sure he wasn't following me. Then, the next morning, I woke up to a text message from him. It said, "Hey baby, I was really worried about you last night, so I did some digging on my laptop and found your address." Then he added, "You really need to be more careful with your privacy, sweetie." I thought he was bluffing, so I told him he didn't have my address. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. He sent me my full address, then my full name, then the names of my parents, and even our birthdays. My stomach dropped. Then he sent one last message. "I can come over right now and comfort you. I want to show you how much I love you." I was alone in the house at the time, and I was terrified. The only thing I could think to do was run to my neighbor's house across the street. He was a retired police officer, and thankfully I saw his truck in the driveway. I ran across the street and found him working in his garage. I must have looked completely panicked because he stopped immediately and asked what was wrong. I told him everything: the dating app, the beach, the bar, the messages. His expression got serious very quickly. He told me to come inside and watch the road through the window. If he shows up, he said, I'll call the police. About 20 minutes later, I heard the sound of a Jeep engine coming down the road. My heart started pounding, and then I saw it, his Jeep. He slowed when he got near my house, like he was checking the addresses. Then he turned into my driveway. My neighbor immediately picked up the phone and called the police. Right then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from him. I'm at your door. Then another message. So this is where you hide. I felt sick. I just kept staring out the window, waiting. Then suddenly 2 police cars came flying down the street and blocked the driveway. He didn't even have time to leave. I watched him as officers pulled him out of the Jeep and put him in handcuffs.
For a moment, he looked over and saw me standing in my neighbor's window. And the strangest thing was, he didn't look angry. He looked heartbroken. But I didn't feel bad. What he did was insane. There wasn't enough evidence to keep him in jail for very long, but I did get a restraining order. And thankfully, so far, that's been enough to keep him away.
This happened a few years ago, and even now, just thinking about it still gives me chills. It was a clear night, sometime around 10:30 p.m. The air was cool and quiet, the kind of night where everything feels calm and normal. I had just finished a long shift and took a taxi home. Nothing unusual about the ride, nothing that made me uneasy. When the taxi pulled up near my apartment building, I paid the driver, stepped out, and watched the car disappear down the street. At first, everything seemed normal. The streetlights cast long yellow pools of light across the sidewalk, and the neighborhood was mostly silent, except for the occasional distant car passing by. I started walking toward my building, thinking about nothing in particular. But after a few steps, I had this strange feeling. You know that feeling when you sense someone watching you even before you see them? I glanced over my shoulder. About half a block behind me was a man walking the same direction. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Plenty of people walk the same streets at night. Still, something about him felt wrong. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't looking around, he was just walking, straight toward me. I tried to ignore it and kept moving. My apartment was only a few minutes away, but for some reason I didn't want him seeing exactly where I lived, so I decided to take a shortcut through an alley that cut between two buildings. I turned into the alley. The second I did, I heard footsteps behind me. I glanced back again. He had turned into the alley too. My stomach dropped. The alley was narrow and dimly lit, with only a single flickering light mounted halfway down the brick wall. Trash bins lined the sides, and a smell of damp pavement hung in the air. I started walking faster. His footsteps sped up too. Now my heart was pounding. I told myself maybe he just lived nearby, maybe he was heading the same direction. But the way he moved, the way he kept the same distance behind me, it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. I started walking faster, then faster. Eventually, I broke into a run, and the moment I did, he started running too. The sound of his footsteps hitting the pavement behind me echoed through the alley, getting closer and closer. Adrenaline hit me hard, and I ran as fast as I could. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like they were going to give out, but I kept pushing forward. I could hear him behind me again, his footsteps closing the distance. I was starting to run out of breath. My chest tightened, and my vision blurred slightly from exhaustion. Then suddenly, arms wrapped around my neck from behind. Before I could even react, I was pulled backward into a chokehold. I tried to scream, but the pressure on my throat cut the sound off. I kicked and thrashed, trying to fight him off. My hands clawed at his arms, trying desperately to break his grip, but he was much stronger than me. The world started to spin. My vision darkened at the edges. The last thing I remembered was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears before everything went black. When I woke up, everything was dark. At first, I didn't even know where I was. My head throbbed, and the air smelled musty and stale, like an old basement or storage room. My hands were tied behind me, and my legs were bound tightly together with rope. Panic shot through me as the memories rushed back. The alley, the running, the man. Then I heard footsteps. A door creaked open somewhere nearby, and faint light spilled into the room. The man stepped inside. I still couldn't see his face clearly, but I could see something in his hand, a knife. My heart felt like it stopped. He walked slowly toward me, the blade glinting faintly in the dim light. Every step echoed through the quiet room. When he got close, he crouched down in front of me and placed the knife on the floor beside me. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door upstairs. He froze. Another knock followed, louder this time. He rushed out through the room, muttered something under his breath, and shut the door behind him. For a second, I just sat there, stunned. Then my eyes fell on the knife. It was right beside me. I twisted my body as much as I could, straining my arms behind me until my fingers brushed against the handle. It took several tries, but eventually I managed to grab it. Carefully, I began sawing at the rope binding my wrists. The blade slipped a few times, nicking my skin, but I didn't care. I just kept cutting. Finally, the rope snapped. I quickly cut the rope around my legs and stood up, my legs shaking from exhaustion. Then I started screaming as loud as I could. "Help! Somebody help!" Seconds later, heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. The door burst open. He was back. The moment he stepped inside, I didn't think. I lunged forward and drove the knife into him. He staggered back, shouting in shock. I dropped the knife and ran. My phone was on a small table nearby. I grabbed it and dialed 911 with shaking hands. While I was on the call, a notification popped up on my screen. It was one of those emergency alerts. It said that a prison inmate had escaped earlier that night, and authorities believed he was still in the area. My blood ran cold when I saw the photo. It was him. A few minutes later, police sirens filled the street outside. Officers rushed into the building and arrested him. They told me he had escaped from a nearby transport van earlier that evening and had been hiding in the area. If that knock on the door hadn't happened when it did, I don't even want to think what would have happened. To this day, whenever I walk alone at night, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, because sometimes I still feel like someone is following me. And every time I pass a dark alley, I remember the sound of those footsteps getting closer behind me.
This happened when I was about 12 years old, and even now, I still think about it sometimes. Back then, my family lived in a really remote area. When I say remote, I mean really remote. The nearest neighbor was probably a 15-minute drive away, and the road leading to our house was basically just a long stretch of trees and dirt. Behind our house, there were about 6 acres of forest, maybe more. It felt endless when I was a kid. I used to spend a lot of time back there, wandering through the trees, climbing rocks, building little forts out of fallen branches. It was my favorite place to explore, even though there was always something about those woods that felt off. Over the years, I started noticing strange things scattered throughout the forest. There were rusty nails hammered into trees in random places, old pieces of metal half buried in the dirt, bent wires, broken tools, and other things that clearly didn't belong in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it felt like someone had once used those woods for something, but I could never figure out what. Still, I was a kid. Curiosity usually beat fear, so I kept exploring. Most of the time, when I went into the woods, I followed the same direction. I'd walk north, where the forest was thick but familiar. But one afternoon, I decided to go east instead. I remember thinking it might be fun to see a part of the forest I hadn't really explored before. At first, it seemed normal, just trees, fallen branches, and the quiet sound of the wind moving through the leaves. But the farther east I went, the stranger the woods started to feel. The trees were spaced differently there, taller and more crooked somehow. The ground felt uneven, and the sunlight barely reached the forest floor. Then I started noticing things that made my stomach turn. The first thing I saw was a dead rabbit lying in the dirt. it looked like it had been there for a while. I remember stopping for a second and staring at it, feeling uneasy, but trying to convince myself it was normal. Animals die in the woods all the time. So I kept going. A little farther ahead, I saw 2 birds dead near the base of a tree. Then another rabbit. Then something bigger. When I got closer, I realized it was a bear. A dead bear. Even as a kid, I knew that wasn't normal. I remember just standing there, staring at it, feeling this creeping fear building in my chest. By then, the sun was starting to get lower in the sky, and the woods were getting darker. That was the moment I had decided I should probably head back home. So I turned around and started walking the way I came. I had only gone maybe 10 feet when I heard something move in a nearby bush. I stopped immediately. The leaves rustled again. Slowly, I turned around, expecting to see a squirrel or maybe a deer, but there was nothing there. Just the quiet forest. I told myself it was probably just a bird or some small animal and started walking again. But after a few more steps, I heard it again. Another movement, this time from a different bush. I started walking a little faster. Then it happened again and again. Every time I moved, something in the woods seemed to move too. By now, I was starting to get really scared. My heart was beating faster, and I kept looking over my shoulder, trying to see if anything was following me. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Not animal footsteps. Human footsteps. And they were getting closer. At that point, I started walking as fast as I could, trying not to panic. Then the footsteps turned into thumping, running sounds. Someone was running, and they were running toward me. I spun around for a quick second just to see what was behind me, and that's when I saw him. A man. He had to be at least 6'5", maybe taller. He looked wild, almost feral. His body was covered in bruises and scratches, and when he opened his mouth, I noticed something that terrified me even more. He barely had any teeth, maybe 3 teeth left at most. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't yelling, he was just running straight at me. For a split second, we locked eyes, and I saw something in his expression that I can't fully describe. Not anger, not even rage, just this desperate, almost animal-like look. That was the moment I started running for my life. I bolted through the woods faster than I ever had before. Branches whipped against my arms and legs as I pushed through the trees. Behind me, I could hear him crashing through the forest, getting closer and closer. I remember thinking over and over in my head, "He's going to catch me. He's going to catch me." I was running so fast, my chest felt like it was going to explode. And even though I do track now, I'm pretty sure that was still the fastest I've ever run in my life. The trees started thinning out ahead of me. I could see the edge of the woods, our backyard, our house. But when I risked another quick glance behind me, he was right there, only a few feet away, close enough that I could hear his breathing. Right before it felt like he was about to grab me, I burst out of the woods and sprinted across our backyard. I ran straight to the back porch and slammed into the door. When I finally turned around to look back at the tree line, he was gone. Just gone. The woods were completely still. No movement, no sound, like nothing had ever been there. I ran inside the house and started yelling for my parents. I told them everything about the strange woods, the dead animals, the man chasing me. At first, they didn't believe me. They thought maybe I had imagined it or gotten scared by something in the forest. But then my mom noticed something on the back of my neck, a long scratch, deep enough that it had already started bleeding. I hadn't even felt it happen. The only explanation was that he must have just barely reached me before I escaped the woods. I still have the scar today. Not long after that, my parents decided it might be better if we moved somewhere else. And honestly, I'm always grateful we did. Because even now, when I think about those woods behind that house, I still wonder what that man was doing out there.
If you enjoyed tonight's stories, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of Terrora. And if you've ever experienced something unsettling of your own, feel free to share it. Your story might appear in a future episode. Until next time, this is Terrora, brought to you by Survival Horror Ambience. Sleep well.